Hello and welcome to Back2Hoops. Today we've got a deep dive video on the other side of Quidditch, the offense. How do we score goals and win the game? I'm going to be your host, James, and I'm joined by Dan. Say hi, Dan.
Hello.
And by Jay. Say hi.
Hi, everyone. Before we get into it, looking at offense, we just want to say that today's video is sponsored by Utility Apparel. So Utility Apparel is a provider specialising in Quidditch gear. They produce team kits, referee gear, and snitch gear. And they do have an online store. In the store, there are Quidditch jerseys from 21 countries in the world. It's a really big market, and there's huge potential for teams to make a profit selling their own merchandise by marketing it to visitors from across the world. By watching our wonderful episode of Back2Hoops today, you can get 20% off from their store using the code Back2Hoops. That's back, the number 2, and hoops. And it is valid until when, James?
The 19th.
The 19th. So I suggest you buy very quickly. So once you've watched this episode and become an absolute Quidditch legend, go and buy something from them, please.
Thank you very much. Okay, so like I say, we're going to look into the offense today. So, we're going to look at how to set one up, some examples of different ways you can attack, some of the strengths and weaknesses of those systems, when we might choose to pick which system to use, and how to drill it. Like with the defensive videos we've done, they are not the be-all and end-all. There are obviously variations in this, stylistic changes you can tweak and make to these, but this is a good bedrock for which to base your ideas from. So that we're all on the same page, we're going to look at just some quick terminology that Jay, Dan, and I are going to use throughout. So we're looking at chasers here. So we've got our primary carrier. This is the quaffle player who is going to set up most of your team's attacks. They're going to have the ball in their hand a good amount of time. Often it's the keeper on your team, but it doesn't have to be. But they are, say, responsible for how you're going to attack. So they need to be decisive. The other roles on pitch, you've got your technical chaser or your secondary chaser. They share responsibilities for setting up the attack with the primary carrier. Ideally, positioning allows them to have a slightly different angle of attack. And I always think of them as the one having to execute the plan. So the primary comes up with the plan, goes, this is what we're doing. And then the secondary enacts it, either through a cutting pass or making a drive or something like that. Okay, and they need to have a more specialized play pattern, I would suggest, to mix it up a little bit. And then the third kind of role you have on pitch are your receivers. They're generally set higher up the pitch towards the opposition's half, and their job is to get into space by making it for themselves if they can't find it naturally, making cuts to hoops, getting free, and they need to have good hands. Okay, if they don't catch it, if they're not able to do that, they can't make that space to catch it, it's not going to work. So those are kind of 3 roles on pitch. Anything you want to add on that, Jay? Or move on?
Yeah, I think the main thing to remember is you can specialise in one position. So you can be mainly a primary carrier or mainly a receiver, but across the game, you will sometimes have to do the role of another position, either through it being part maybe of your set play or your plan, or by beaters, blowing up your offense and possession having to move around, or you just might end up with the ball and your players might trust you. So while you can say, yeah, I'm a primary carrier, you still need the skills of a technical secondary and a receiver as well. The more well-rounded you are, the more you can adapt to certain positions on pitch. Just saying, my only use is throwing the ball as a carrier. If you suddenly find yourself not doing that on pitch, you don't want to be useless. You still need at least one other weapon in your arsenal when you're attacking.
And that's actually a good point, Jay. Often I find the people you're on with determines kind of your role. So with a certain set of chasers, I might be a primary carrier, but if I then go sub off and then when I sub back on later in the game, I'm with a different set of 6, I may well now be a secondary or that receiver, and your role will change depending on the people you're on. You want the best fit for each role to start with. Okay, so what is an offense? This sounds quite obvious. An offense is simply, and the purpose of it is to try and score a goal and do that with the highest possibility given the available information to you. Okay, and what I think that is in terms of hierarchy is, first of all, assessing what your team can do. What is your roster's capabilities? Are they more predisposed to driving? Are they more predisposed to throwing? What is it that your team is good at? Okay, because that's going to be the bedrock of what you're able to do. Then you need to look at what the opposition is doing. How are they set up? What are their strengths and weaknesses? And how can we attack to exploit them? Thirdly, we've got who's got bludger control. Attacking, it turns out, is way easier when you have bludger control, because your beaters can take out defenders. Also, their relative positioning on pitch. If the beaters are all stacked on the left-hand side, a play pattern, a set offense that goes down the left, maybe not as good an idea, because that's where all the chaos is. Okay, think about where the position of the beaters are, the position of the players are on pitch. Number 4, where is the mismatch? Where on offense do you have the greatest disparity between attacker and defender? Where is that advantage the greatest? And conversely, where are you weakest? Okay, who's being mismatched against? Try and work that out, and that's where you want the ball to go, where you have the advantage. Next, you've got the time and the score. If you're winning by a load, or you're losing by a lot, you can afford to take more risks. Okay, you can throw that slightly edgier pass. You can try and take on that extra drive, or try to deflect that bludger. Okay, in your setup, because you've got a bit of a score cushion to work with. So if you're winning by a lot, losing by a lot, doesn't matter, you're doing all right. If the game is closer, if the score is closer, if it's just getting to snitch on pitch time, you probably want to be more conservative in the attacking options you take, just so you don't turn the ball over and concede and then lose and swim and garbage when that happens. Okay, and finally, the weather. Trying to play incredibly pretty, fancy, fast-flowing passing Quidditch in a gale isn't going to happen. Conversely, if the ground is incredibly boggy, you're going to sink into the mud. A driving game is going to sap your legs really quickly. Okay, so taking the weather conditions into account is quite important. Anything you want to add on that, Jay or Dan?
Yeah, just on the weather and roster capability. I think a lot of people get bogged down in trying to play pretty Quidditch or fancy Quidditch and play the right way. I think the thing to bear in mind is the way to play the right way is whatever gives your team the best chance of winning. You can play ugly drive-heavy Quidditch, and I'm a huge fan of ugly drive-heavy Quidditch. But if that's what's going to facilitate your team winning, then that's what you should do. There's no point when you go to a tournament and it's really muddy saying, well, we're a passing team meta, so we're only going to play that. Sometimes you do have to adjust to the weather and the people that are put in front of you. It depends on how your team is set up, but the best way to win is to play in the play style that gives you the best chance of winning. In the same way that if it's lovely and summery, please throw the extra passes. But it doesn't matter what play style you play to win. The fact is you're trying to win through your play style.
Cool.
And just on I don't know if we're going to come up to it a bit later about mismatch, and obviously what we mean by that, and obviously there's lots of different types.
So yeah, we are going to come on to that near the end, but essentially, yeah, it's when you have a difference between attacker and defender that gives one of those players an advantage. So that might be a speed advantage, it might be a size advantage, it might just be a game intelligence advantage, knowing that I know that this over here is going to happen in a few phases of play, so I can take advantage of that and move around. And you don't, because you're newer to the game potentially. Okay, so anyway where you gain an advantage, that's a mismatch. Okay. Okay. One of the essentials of, I think, Quidditch attacking and defending to a degree is field position. So on the screen you can see essentially a map of half of the pitch. Okay, and it's kind of color-coded by intensity of play and speed of thought you need to be making and your chances of scoring. Okay, so in the green space, that's where you're trying to set up. Okay, that's normally where your primary carrier is going to have the ball for definite. Right, you're trying to plan what you're going to do, where are your beaters going, talking it through. That's because there's no real rush and there's no real threat of scoring from here. Okay, you're not shooting from halfway with any high degree of chance of scoring. Okay, so your green space is essentially your safe space. This is fine for both the offense and the defense. There's no pressure. What you want to be trying to do is get the ball, transition the ball from green to the yellow space. Okay, the yellow is when you start to make something happen, right? That's when you might look to throw that pass. That might be where you try to take out a beater and start setting up your drive or your cuts. Okay, the yellow is where you've got a more moderate chance of scoring and you are trying to up the intensity of your attack. And finally, you're going into that red space. When we're in red, you have an imminent chance of scoring. Okay, your chance of scoring go way up. If you're receiving the ball in this space, you're within 1 or 2 steps of the hoops. The ball can go in. Okay, so that's the act of scoring space, right? However, that does also work inversely for the defense. They don't care if you're in the green space because you're not going to score. They start to engage in that yellow space. That's where they may well set up their zone. And in the red space, its body's on the line. Your decision maker is going to be much quicker because they're just going to throw themselves at you. Okay, so your time on the ball without being engaged reduces as you get into the red zone. Okay. Now,
the more
I have one more. I would suggest though, just because you go into the red zone does not mean you have to throw the ball away as a chance to score. There is no harm going into the red zone going, this isn't on, we're getting bodied, let's pull back out and try again. Okay? Just because you can score doesn't mean you have to score. Sorry, Jay.
I will say, so the green zone for your team is going to stay the same for the most part, depending on ability. And to be perfectly honest, the orange zone for most teams stays the same depending on ability. But the more confident and the more able you get, the bigger your yellow zone becomes. So once your passes become quicker and more accurate, once you have more prolific shooters or drivers, your yellow zone can start to expand. And the bigger your yellow zone is, the harder it is for a defense to adjust to you. So your yellow zone is what you're looking at, it's expanding in training. The actual act of scoring is relatively straightforward, but setting up that goal is what you want to be working on. So when you're looking at the field, maybe when you're a new team, your yellow zone is going to be quite small, maybe just a little bit bigger than the orange zone. But once you're more confident with your game plans and what you're doing, then your yellow zone starts to expand.
Cool. Thank you. Okay, so this is our first style of offense, okay, the first way of scoring. Okay, again, there are lots of different ways. We've just sort of broken it down into 4 or 5 of the ways we think are the most common. When we're talking about this, I want you to stylistically think about how Raptors traditionally score, okay, because it's how they're set up more often than not. And this is called the drive and dish to secondary. Some people shorthand that to the crash ball idea. Okay, so here, the primary ball carrier holds the quaffle and they drive at and they commit 1 or more defenders. In this situation, we've got them driving at the point and the half, trying to commit them to make a stop. Okay. As soon as those defenders are committed, the primary carrier looks to shift the ball across the face of the pitch to an oncoming secondary ball handler. Okay. So the ball handler on secondary is running as well, running parallel, and they're going to take the ball once their mark effectively has moved to stop the initial drive. Okay. Ideally, you want to take that ball at pace, and then you hit the yellow zone, and our diagram here, hit the yellow zone into the red at pace so they can then make a play off it, either by just crashing into the hoops and driving and scoring, or by getting a shot away. Okay. But it all starts with that initial drive by the primary ball carrier committing the defenders. If they don't commit the defenders are just going to move across and hammer the person you pass the ball to. Okay, it's going to be a hospital pass. They're just going to get taken from the side. None of us like seeing that unless it's on the other team. Okay, you've got to commit. You've got to look like you're going to score the first time. The more people you can suck into that when that initial drive, the bigger threat you look like you're going to pose, the more space and time you create for your secondary to then make a play on it. Okay, Jason, what's that on that?
Yeah, I'd just say the 2 runs need to be quite hard lines. So the person with the ball, the primary carrier, when you're trying to commit the defenders, it actually has to look like you're going to do something. You can't canter up. It has to be a run so that the defenders move towards you. And the same way for the secondary, the crash ball, they want to be catching the ball in front of them and then running in. It has to be a real hard line, basically catching the ball on a sprint so that they can receive it in the yellow and drive straight into the red with pace. if they're getting it standing still, the defense is just going to just step out and tackle them. So this needs to be high intensity. This is a really simple way of scoring, but a lot of teams mess it up by not doing it quick enough. Okay, just because you've got the ball and you're crashing in, you still have to take on at least the keeper. So you need to have some moves, whether it's a sidestep or a fake or a shot, to try and convert. But the main thing is this has to be a hard run, and you have to do this at pace with commitment. There's going to be contact. You just have to get used to it and brush it off.
I think. Yeah, I was just going to say that the other thing as well, you can't just say to yourself, "This is what I'm going to do," because if the people move, and then you still do the same thing, you've obviously. I think we're going to talk about obviously that breakaway goal. So you want to, you know, if obviously the things in front of you change, you've got to change what you're doing. You can't just say, "But this is what I said we were going to do, so I'm going to just do that." I think that's
yeah,
it can be a bit of an issue, can't it?
Definitely so. You don't want to just don't stick to a bad option if you've got time to adapt. One way of this being not having to be quite such a harsh line as Jay was mentioning is if you can use a beater to clear up space for your secondary, which we're going to see in a sec, because it means they have got more time to make a more considered option. Okay, but yeah, let's go watch this in action. So hopefully this works. So here we have Rad's first Olympians from this year's Northern. Okay, we have the ball handler, Tommy Ruler there. We've got Lucy creating space, taking out the half. Okay, which then creates space for me in that secondary. So the ball's gone forwards. Because Lucy's been there, I've taken the ball on, and I've got a time to score because there's no defender in. Okay. So here, committed, created space, forward pass to the crash. I'm in, plenty of space in, and can score. Okay.
So that's obviously different angles to the one, like obviously we looked at with the crosses as well. So it can come from anywhere, really.
Yeah, it's just the mirror side. I was on the right rather than on the left, but yeah. And it's going to be the same thing on this one here. So this is the... So same thing here. Let me do it. Elliot Fisher on the ball here. Lucy again created some space by taking out the half, which means it's now Elliot one-on-one. Elliot starts to drive, commits the defender. Okay, he's taken the keeper out. Pass comes over, and then it goes straight in again. Okay, so take the defender, commit them, shift the ball ideally ahead of you and to the side, and that new player comes in and can then make the drive, the shot, the pass, whatever they need to do. You're crashing onto it by taking out the defender first.
I think there's a bit of a mind game in that as well, isn't there? Like, this person was going to score, I tackled them, I did everything I could do, but their team still scored. That's got to play on your mind a little bit. But I think we'll talk about that later.
Yeah,
well, maybe.
No, definitely. Like, it's one of those, oh, actually, I've done everything I can and they've still done it. That's kind of sucky. And it can, if it happens again and again, it can start to rag on the rest of the team, I think. It's like, why aren't you doing your job? I did it mentality. Okay, this is the next style of attack. Okay, and when I think of this, I think stylistically very often of LQC in the UK playing like this. Okay, they pull off this move a lot, or some variation. Team France, or Titans, if you want to give them their other name, or any of the Turkish teams. Okay, though this style of goal happens a lot if you watch any footage from them. Okay, so here it's the same initial idea as the previous one. The carrier commits onto a defender by running hard at them, and then rather than shifting to a secondary ball handler, they shift it to the hoop to a receiver who has made a cut. Okay, so they run at, in this instance, the keeper, and the left side wing chaser, the left side receiver, has come round and then cut just outside the far hoop, ready to be one step away for a one catch release goal. Okay, it's one of those ones that's really quite hard to stop in a one a 2v1 situation, the keeper is essentially always going to lose this because either they don't respect the drive enough and marks the pass, and the driver just scores, or they commit to the driver, and then the pass is really easy. Okay, you do want to put this ball just outside the hoop, because if you put it, the cut just outside the hoop, because if you cut in front of the hoop, you might stop it just going in, and you're giving it a much harder angle for the person who's throwing it, because the keeper's arm span suddenly becomes a bit of a block.
Yeah, I'd just say as well that as a driver, you need to, once again, actually look like a threat here. This is all about selling the drive rather than actually being proficient in it. Because if the person doesn't respect your ability to go at them, like James has just said, they're just going to force you into the throw and then try and recover. Whereas if you're running with commitment, then they have to make the tackle. The keeper's going to try and hedge their bets as much as they can if they think you're weaker at one than the other. If they think you can't drive, they're going to fake the tackle, then try and take the pass out. If they think you can't pass, they're just going to try and meet you earlier. So you need to at least sell the fact that you can make either of these options work, or as an offensive player, you're going to be a lot easier to read and thus to stop.
Definitely so. The cuts that these receivers are making are not set in stone, but it is way easier to create space for that, for the whole team and for yourself, if you start behind the goal. So you start behind the goal and then cut to in front, because that means you're out of the eye line of the keeper and the hoop defender if there is one. Okay, so you're behind them, they can't see you, they don't know when you're timing your run, that makes it much harder for them to cover you. Or if they do look around, turn around to look at you, watch you, they're not watching the ball, and the driver has a much easier chance. Okay, so starting behind the goal and cutting to in front, better than the reverse. And we'll watch that in action. I will say this is harder against a 2-2 zone if it's fully set up, because there is often another chaser on that other hoop. But that's why that cut is even more important. The timing of it matters even more. Okay, so we have a few versions of it. Yeah.
That famous LQC and France.
Well, we have got a France one. It turns out finding it is much harder. Okay, so here we've got Tommy committing in. Okay, Lucy's forcing the defense back because they don't want to get beat out, as Bill goes in and annihilates a beater in this instance. And then it's a straight pass to Hoops. Okay, cutting from just behind. Essentially, Tommy has committed the defense by having Lucy in front of him, forcing the team back. That's essentially committed their action. They can't meet it any higher because of the pressure of Lucy. Okay, but it's that same pass to the hoop. Okay. What this also has done is created space on the other side for Marsha, who would also be uncontested. We see the same thing in this one. Put it so big. Okay, so driver's driving, committed the defender, committed the beater, and the pass has come across the face of the goal. See, unmarked one. And Cat is unmarked in that. The receiver is unmarked in that attack because, if you look at it, all the chasers, all the defense pretty much, are looking at Jay Holmes, our carrier. Okay, they're all looking that way, which means they can't see Cat coming in for the easy goal. And as I said, good receivers have good hands, catch, release, jobs are good. Okay, that's what we're looking to see.
This is what we were saying about your chaser and your driver or your keeper being a threat. Because the drives have been made earlier in that game, the defense feels they have to adjust to it. Once the defending team has adjusted to the drive, that's when you can start opening up the passing playbook, because someone is going to be unmarked if they're committing their team to stop one or two players driving it in.
Definitely. Similar idea, though, a slightly different angle of attack, but the same idea of committing a player and then a pass to goal. Okay. Here, the entire defense is looking at the French carrier, leaving a lot of space on this right-hand side. Okay. and then it's a straight pass to the outside of the hoop. One step, goal, excellent finish. Okay, so by having the defensive eyes be drawn to the carrier, you're creating space for your receivers, okay, to get it at the hoop. If any of these passes had been taken 3 steps back from where they've caught it, the defense would have had time to adjust and the person would have been hit and the goal wouldn't have been made. Okay, so you're looking to put it onto the hoop essentially. Okay. This is, in my eyes, the future. I think this is how we're going to be attacking a lot more often in the future. So if you can get this one, if you're going to practice one, I'd be practicing this. I know my teams are all going to be doing that this season. And we're calling this sort of the round the corner pass. And it's basically because of that. It's trying to take advantage of the placement of a 2-2 zone by taking the ball, again, with a drive to start with, to the side of the pitch where the zone is weakest and there's the greatest chance for confusion. Okay, a quick pass ahead, and then a shift around the back of the goal before the defense has time to turn around. Okay, so following the blue arrows of the ball. Okay, and they score in the far side. So it's essentially kind of very similar to the goal that Jay scored in the last video, or in the middle video rather, where he's taken the attention of the defense round to that side, so their backs are now facing the left-hand side of the pitch. Ball shifts around quickly, and it goes in. This does need to have fast hands. Okay, the ball speed needs to be up there, because if you're too slow on this with the passing, the defense will adjust, and they're just going to nail the chaser in the top right corner. Okay, or if you get wrapped up and it's like a little pass out the top, you know, those underarm passes we're all a fan of, that chaser's just going to get mobbed. Okay.
The way to look at this, how I see it, is your primary, secondary, and receiver roles. The secondary changes a little bit. So you still got your primary, but then your secondary becomes what I call the link, and then you have a receiver. So you're going primary to your link to your receiver, and the link's the really vital pass here. They have to have quick enough hands to catch the ball and then shift it over as quickly as they can. So this is all on your link player. So your link player is going to have to be confident on the ball because they're going to come under a lot of pressure and good at decision making. So that's a role that needs to be practiced quite a lot. But luckily, we're going to see some excellent link play from some very, very good-looking people in a second.
I'm guessing, though, that ties directly into what we said right at the start, where you want to be able to do a bit of everything as well, don't you?
Yeah,
exactly. If you're a
receiver
that's also can do the primary stuff, that's great.
Yeah, honestly, if you're a Quidditch coach watching this, please trade all your players to be able to throw and catch. Everyone needs to be able to do it. Please do that.
How do you learn?
Let's have a look at the future right here. Mermaids, the home of innovation.
So here we have a game from earlier. Jay has shown he's going to drive. So again, he's fixed the defense. You can see ahead of him his 2 receivers, Cat and Geneva. Okay, and we're going to see the link goal around the corner goal. So Jay drives right, commits multiple defenders. Okay, in fact, 4 players are looking at Jay here. Commits the chase on the hoops. Passes over to Cat, who shifts it across the back of the goal to Geneva. Okay.
So that's relying there on people thinking the driver's going to come, the quick flick pass, your link seeing what has happened and then identifying your receiver and moving the ball quickly. If Cat doesn't play the link well there, this goal does not happen. Because I've been smothered by their entire defence. If Cat doesn't get that out quick enough, she's going to get smothered too. So Cat's the link between myself and Geneva here. That's the vital role.
And Cat's
when you're running, I was just going to ask, when you're running forward in that position, Jay, are you thinking, I'm going to pass before people come and tackle you? Is that what you're going to do from square one? Are you just thinking, I want to drive past them completely? What's your sort of thought process?
So for me, I like to think I'm quite good at my decision making on pitch. So I try and adjust on the fly. But in a situation like that, when I've seen that, basically I'm looking for, is Geneva free? Now, when we go to the start of the clip, I've identified basically that as soon as I commit, the defense is going to adjust to me. Even here, I think that's Ruben Lampe, who is on the hoops with the keeper, is still looking at me. So I've identified that Geneva is free, which means I know that this round the corner link play is going to work. If Geneva isn't free, then maybe I'm going to take the drive more. But as soon as I see that there's going to be an open receiver, I'm going to become a pass first player rather than a drive first player.
So goes in, commits. Everyone's stuck. Cat gets the ball. Cat is in a position to score, which also half commits the keeper, and it's across. Excellent goal. Well done, Mermaids. And there is another one very quickly here. Same idea, essentially. Commits in. Don't know if it's going to let me show it properly. Oh, it is. I commit the defender because I fall over. Shifts left to the hoops to Jay. That commits Seb, Bex, and another player. Shifts across to Callum. And Callum has good hands to finish quickly. Okay. Same goal, just mirrored on the other side. Commit defender, shift the ball across, commit the second one, shift it to the far side. And I do genuinely think this is the goal we're going to see the most of from high-level teams next year, because it's good to do, and it works against any potential rule changes we might see. And then this is the last real style one we're going to talk about today, and that is the counter-attack. Everyone knows how to run a counter-attack. Okay, you just get the ball and you run it, obviously. Why are we even showing it? We're showing it because people are lazy, myself included. When your team gets a counter-attack, when your team has an opportunity to turn the ball over and run with it, all of your chasers need to run the break, not just one and go, oh, well done them. They drove, they scored, great. Because sometimes they don't. Sometimes defenders recover. Sometimes a beater gets a long throw. You all need to run it. You all need to run the support lines so that if somehow it goes wrong, you still have a good chance of scoring. Okay? Please, please, please don't be lazy on this. Right? All our chasers are running on the turnover here, and 3 of them end up in the keeper zone. So the pass comes, and it's an easy goal. Right? If that's not got a support runner on it, if there's not a support runner there, Ruben kills me, right? And we don't score it. Okay? And the game is close for a bit. Right? But because my runners have gone with there, it's an easy one-pass goal, scores every time. And it does not matter how good a defender Ruben is there. He could be the best defender in the world. He's not blocking 3 of us by himself. Right? We're going to score because my players were not lazy in that situation. Okay? Run the fast break. If you can't sprint the fast break, sub and get someone else who can. Okay, those are the styles of goal. There are obviously variations. There are obviously different slight positions on pitches, but they're your general ways of scoring. Your ways, I would suggest that a good 85% of goals in the UK are scored presently. The other 50% probably being some sort of lucky shot, if I'm honest, because it's always lucky, because it's not a skill we practice enough. So this is the big term we're going to just look at. Where is the mismatch? As I said earlier, we define mismatch as any advantageous disparity between offensive and defensive players. Okay, when anywhere you have the advantage. Okay, where I think a lot of emphasis needs to be put on this is how you then utilize your resources. Okay, and I'm going to use beaters as the resource here, functionally. Right, if you have got a very good ball carrier, okay, who has the better of their point defender. Okay, so you know your ball carrier is going to get past their point defender without much trouble because your ball carrier has got a good mismatch. Don't waste your beater's time and your team's offensive time tapping out the point defender. Okay, go use your resources, your beaters, where you need help. Okay, go deep. Go take out the beater so the receiver has a better chance of scoring. Okay, go take out a mark on a marked player so that they're a free option for you. Right. Conversely, if the point defender is really good and your ball carrier is not as good, beaters, don't fuck off to the far end of the pitch and expect the ball to get there, because it's not gonna. Right. The point defender is going to kill your carrier, turn the ball over, and then because the other team has watched this video, they're all going to run the fast break and score. Right? And you're going to look up as a beater and go, oh, we don't have the ball. Why didn't we score? And it's because you left your carrier to an aggressive point defender. Okay? Apply your beta support where you are at your weakest. Okay? Or to help shore up a matchup. Don't waste your betas. Don't waste your time and resources where you already have such an advantage. Okay? That little bit, I think, will massively improve most teams' offensive outputs. Okay? On screen, here's how I would drill this very quickly. Okay? So, I would start with the very basics. If you want to practice all those kind of goals together, I would start with just getting the people in lines, running the routes you want them to run, and just put in that one pass. Okay, so everyone gets used to the timing and the positioning of the run. Once they've got the initial drive and dish one, you can start putting in the cut to hoop. And again, you can just mark that out with cones so everybody knows where they're meant to be running. Okay? Again, get everybody to practice it, practice it, practice it, practice it. Then you can start to build in the other positions and the other options. Okay? And finally, you can have all 4 chasers running an individual route and have the carrier decide, or you decide as the coach, which route you're going to pick for this run. But you want everybody on the team to be running their route eventually. Then you can build it up to have defenders adding in beaters and pressure and things like this to make it more game realistic, and then you can put it into a half court. But start with the basics, show them where you want them to run, how you want the ball to be delivered to each person, and what they need to do. And if you have time, then start to build a phase 2 in. What happens if the initial one doesn't work? How do we work our reset into it? Okay. And then this is basically that. Is it. Work on your strengths, look at your opposition, think of a plan B. What else are we going to do? How are our rotations going to work? So you've got able to enact your game plan, a video we're going to have later on in the series, and then drill it, drill it, drill it, drill it, drill it until you get it. Okay. And that is where we are going to end today's video on offense. Please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Please, if you've got any feedback or any content you would like to see, to make, please email us at back2hoops@gmail.com. And finally, again, I would like to thank our sponsor, Utility Apparel, for sponsoring this video, and go buy their stuff using the code Back2Hoops. It's valid until the 19th of May. So say bye, Jay.
Goodbye.
Say bye, Dan.
Bye, Dan.
Bye, all. Take care.